Move into the NBA. NBA draft is tonight. We filmed the night before we released this episode. So the NBA draft's tonight. Nick's hoping a lot for his Spurs. There's been a lot of trade stuff going on. The NBA starts in less than a month. Look, are you kidding me? Golf can start soon if the NBA can start 2 months later. They can do it. So, Nick, you're the one super, super hyped for the draft. What are you thinking of these trades, the draft coming up, your Spurs? How you feeling?
Yeah, this is an interesting draft. It doesn't have the top tier talent that, we talked a little bit about this last week, but it doesn't have a Zion or a Ja Morant. I mean, I think RJ Barrett as a prospect, he went third to the Knicks last year. He probably would be a slam dunk first overall pick with his resume in college this year. So you have LaMelo Ball and Anthony Edwards are the two guys who I think are really the two best players in this draft. I think Anthony Edwards is the best player. Both of them have potentially some commitment issues. I know a big article came out this morning and a lot of quotes from Anthony Edwards, him talking about he's not the biggest basketball guy. He's more of a football fan and him wanting to be a rapper. But also, I read through most of that article.
Classic.
I think people are a little overreacting to it. He's actually overcome an incredible amount in his life. I'm pretty sure his grandparents died when he was young, and that's why he wears the number 5. Is they died on the 5th of the month. So he's overcome a lot. I'm really rooting for him, and I think he's the best prospect in this draft. But him or LaMelo will probably go number 1 overall. Those first 3 picks are interesting because there's been tons of talks about, potential trades, the Warriors trading back, and we just got an update that Clay might be hurt, so that could really change their outcome if they
significantly hurt.
And then, the Timberwolves, I think, are in a weirdly bad position because there's not a slam dunk number 1 pick, and they probably can't get, a superstar or an all-star necessarily for the first overall pick. So it's kind of an interesting draft. I think there's a lot of talent to be had in kind of the 5 to 15 range potentially. I think it's Patrick Williams or something Williams. I can't remember his first name, but he is a potential stud that you can get a little bit later, I think. And then Vasil, he's another small forward wing type player. I think he could be really good. And then Denny, I mentioned him last week he's overseas. He has a chance to be pretty good. So I think it's going to be an interesting draft. I'm really on the lookout for trades. I hope there's a trade into the top 3, whether it's the Spurs or another team. I just like to see that movement. That's one of the best parts about watching the NBA. What are you guys kind of thinking about? What have you heard before I talk about my boys?
All I know is that LeVar Ball said all 3 of his boys would be on the Lakers. One got shipped out of LA. The other isn't good enough to be in the league. And this young one who's supposed to be the best of the 3 is going to go to Chicago or Memphis, I guess. I don't know.
He's been a little quiet since Lonzo left LA.
Yeah, he really has. There's such a drop-off in NBA talent. I mean, there's guys that there's always going to be a Draymond Green, a guy who was taken later, a Bam who ends up being really, really great, develops well, gets the right coaching, builds up that muscle, and is able to change it. For the most part, the top guys go, the top few, and then it's just kind of a crapshoot from there. Heat pick at 20. I don't know enough about them. No March Madness for me to dive into. I'm excited for these young guys to get a chance, since I'm here on a podcast with you guys instead of being an NBA star getting drafted. But I'm happy for them to get a chance. I'm more concerned about all these trades that are going on, what Houston's doing and all that stuff. But for the draft, I'm curious to see where Melo goes because I obviously know him better than anybody else. Kyle?
Mm-hmm. The trades are clearly the most fun part about the NBA. What stars, what big players are going to wear. Because, every year it always changes. It doesn't matter what player stays on what team. It all gets changed and mixed up anyway. So, the stuff with Harden possibly, going to the Nets. I'm really curious about that. I just was hearing that Danny Green, after being, shipped off to the Thunder, was it? And then he immediately got switched over to the
I didn't even know they traded him to the Thunder.
Yeah, he was in the Dennis Schroeder trade.
Yeah, John Wall, I think.
Well, actually, it's been reworked, so it's a 3-team trade now. So it's the Lakers get Dennis Schroeder, and then the Lakers are sending Danny Green not to OKC but to the 76ers, and then the Thunder are getting a ton of picks, like 3 or 4.
I had no idea. I saw a thing today that was like Danny Green's going off. I was like, what? I thought he was on the Lakers. This is the cool thing about NBA.
Yeah.
It reminds me of, remember when LeBron and Wade joined in Cleveland and they had all these guys, they had all these players, and then on the trade deadline, they were like, this is not working. So they blew it up and they just traded everybody. NBA's fun, man. They got some cool trades. They can do a lot of 3-team trades. It's awesome.
Nick, is there a trade in particular so far that is the most head-scratching?
Not really head-scratching yet. I think all of them have made decent sense.
Chris Paul's good.
The Chris Paul trade is probably the best trade, just like purely for the flip, because honestly, the Thunder probably could have gotten more out of it if they sent him somewhere else. But I think Chris Paul wanted to go to Phoenix. That fit is incredible with Devin Booker and Ayton, because Ayton is, it's tough justifying DeAndre Ayton when they picked him in front of Luka and they picked him in front of Trae Young when they need a point guard.
Right.
And so Chris Paul really fills that, and it should help them. I mean, it doesn't make the Suns actual contenders unless Devin Booker goes from like a 25, 27-point scorer to a 33 and a dominant kind of a guy, and Ayton becomes one of the 5 best bigs in basketball. They're at best probably a 6 seed in the West, but if they should make the playoffs. And that would be really big for their franchise. The Covington trade, I think, is underrated for Portland just because it gives them some kind of defense on the wing, and obviously he's a great shooter. Every team seems to want him. He's gotten a lot of picks have been given up to get that guy into people's buildings, and he's a great role piece. Does it put Portland over the edge? Probably not, really. They're in the same bottom half of the West playoffs, kind of a tier. I think the Drew Holiday trade they gave up a little too much for him, but he is an underrated player. I think he's maybe the best wing defender in the NBA, and his ability, Chris Middleton was a big reason, I think, of him not playing great, especially against Miami and just kind of getting bullied. That's not going to happen. That it'll take off some pressure, I think, not from Giannis necessarily, but from Chris Middleton. And if Giannis can take just that half a step in the postseason, he was good in the playoffs, but if he can just stay elite, and then how you add Drew Holiday to that mix and Bogdanovich, who I don't know if that trade's going to go through anymore from the Kings, he would be a very good piece for them. I think it actually has a chance to, unless Harden ends up in the East, whether it is with the 76ers or Nets, I think it keeps the Bucks as the front runner next year, puts them back to it.
That's funny. We were in the finals.
I know. Honestly, I think what it really proves real quick for the Bucks is if they can't get it done, or at least can't get, depending on if Harden shows up and how good KD is and what the Heat are doing, it really puts a lot of pressure on Coach Bud, because if they underperform, they're as talented as anybody in the league now. There is no excuse, and it's all on Coach Bud.
They're making these moves because they don't want Giannis to leave. Giannis.
Well, they
don't want Giannis to leave. They don't want him to leave. And yes, he's saying he's going to stay, but next year, if this season goes bad, you never know how a guy changes his mood.
Well, I don't think so. So whenever he's back from Greece, the Supermax will be offered to him, and I think he will sign it. Is what's kind of going around the league, which means he has to play for them for another 4 or 5 years. And it basically
it's possible,
puts
but you never know. You never know. And I think that's why they're making these moves, because they're saying to him, hey, we're all in on you. Stay with us. We'll get you the pieces. It won't be Cleveland with LeBron. We'll get you the pieces to win a title. And I think they're making good moves. I like Holiday a lot.
I don't think they trade for Drew Holiday if they're not 99.9% sure he's signing in a week or two.
Yeah, I agree.
So I think it's really good for the NBA, because I think it's great if Giannis stays in Milwaukee throughout the course of his, at least throughout the course of most of his prime. If he leaves after this big contract, that's not as big of a deal, because they're going to have hopefully 6 or 7 years of them being able to be in the realm of competing for a championship.
And I think Miami is waiting to see if that happens. If he signs a new deal, takes the max, what are they going to do? Because then it's like, all right, now let's go get a Westbrook. Let's go get somebody to put us over the hump.
That's
I think
true.
That's what they're waiting for.
And Houston is really interesting. I think it's actually likely, unless someone offers them a deal that blows them away, I think they might start the season with at least one of the two, with Westbrook or Harden, if not both.
People believe they might have both,
at the start of the year.
Fair.
And when teams start to get desperate on the trade deadline, I think that's a potential place to move him. Personally, I want to see Harden leave, partially because I'm a Spurs fan and I want the West to be worse. And so if the Rockets stop being a super team, that'd be awesome. I think it'd be really fun to watch him with the Nets, just to see that team try to function. Him, Kyrie, and KD, obviously, they'd be the most talented team. Yep, but it'd be really interesting to see them try to make it work, and I think they probably would make it work. I think they'd be pretty good.
Report that KD wants Harden, but Kyrie does not is interesting, I think.
Yeah, I don't really know what to make of that. I mean, it makes, I can understand KD's better playing off the ball. We saw that in Golden State. He's not a bad off-the-ball player. He can fit with just about any superstar. It's can Kyrie fit?
Yeah.
And we haven't seen Kyrie play at a high level, for an extended period of time in 3 years now.
Yeah, and I think KD they clearly have a better relationship than I think the media gave him credit for with KD and Harden. And I think that shows that Kyrie can be a little off-putting. And it's like, hey, do I want to play with this guy that LeBron won once with? But, what did they have to do to get there when I could take a guy like Harden who has been balling out for the last couple of years and not hurt? So, you wonder what they get. There's also – go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, and I think KD and Harden are good friends from their time with OKC.
Yeah, I think I still they're better friends than we thought.
Yeah, and I still think Russ and Harden, even right now with all this turmoil, I think they understand that they tried it out. They're great friends. It wasn't a great fit, and they're kind of with a roster and it kind of turned into a toxic situation there in Houston at the end. And so I think he still has a very good rapport with. I'm sure he's still great friends with Russell Westbrook. I think Harden and KD would be an amazing duo. But I also really want to see Harden. I would love to see Ben Simmons flipped for James Harden, because I think Ben Simmons with this Rockets roster, I know they just traded back for Trevor Ariza and then they just flipped him. Where did they send him to? That trade just happened, but I can look that up in a second. But they still have a decent amount of shooters. PJ Tucker would be a great fit alongside Ben Simmons. Pistons. I want to see if to the Pistons. So they got him out of there, and they might be willing to trade other guys. But I wouldn't be shocked. I would love to see Ben Simmons away from Joel Embiid, and Harden and Joel Embiid together with Doc Rivers. As much as I've been critical of him in the last handful of months, I think that would be an awesome team to watch.
I forget that he's
make
there.
The East even better. Yep. And what are your guys' thoughts on Harden?
Go where you want, my guy. Miami suddenly got him. I'd prefer him over Westbrook, but that's not even in the trade talk conversation.
If you guys got Harden, good. I mean, depending on what you gave up, if you were able to keep Harden, Butler, and Bam, unreal.
And Hero and Duncan and everybody else we like.
Well, and all the other superstars.
Well, the NBA can get a little.
You have to give up a couple apiece. Like Duncan, he'd be gone. Hero probably would have to be gone, but well worth it for James Harden, I think. I know you probably disagree with me a little bit. You love Hero.
I mean, I do love Hero. He's a stud. But if I got Harden, would I complain? I don't know. I don't think so. But anyway, any final thoughts on the NBA? I don't really have anything. They're wild. They move,
I'll just bring up
wheel and deal.
It's true. I just want to bring up my Spurs for a quick minute because they're going.
And I'll bring up the Heat for 5.
All right. Well, the Spurs are really in an interesting place. I think there's a chance they do move up on draft night. Lamarcus Aldridge and DeMar DeRozan are Lamarcus Aldridge and Demar are two players who definitely could get traded. It seems more likely that LA gets traded over Demar, just seeing Demar's quote about him really wanting to run it back. And I think the Spurs want to run small ball, and I think they're going to, and DeMar DeRozan's going to go from starting his career as a shooting guard to now playing power forward for a year for San Antonio, which would be kind of wild. I think that's a smart move for the Spurs, and I hope we trade LA. I hope we trade Patty Mills. I want to get just a ton of youth in there. I would like to keep DeMar because I think he will help. He's a great fourth quarter scorer. Sorry, but I think it's going to be really interesting. I think there's a chance the Spurs move into the top 5 or even move up just a few spots. I've gotten a lot of the beat writers have said it feels a lot like 2011 when the Spurs traded up for Kawhi Leonard, where there was a lot of rumblings before that draft that the Spurs were going to trade Tony Parker to New York, and that, because Tony Parker didn't have a great year that year prior. Obviously, he ended up really bouncing back, but then we ended up trading George Hill to get Kawhi Leonard. I think a similar type of thing could happen tonight, and I'm just excited about it because it could be the first time if we get a kind of a blue chip prospect or someone who is exciting. It'll be the most excited I've been since Kawhi got hurt in the Western Conference Finals like 4 years ago. I'm still not recovering from it as a Spurs fan. So I'm excited about the future in San Antonio.
Yeah.
Good.
Got a lot of good young talent, and I hope we get some more tonight.
Speaking of
unbelievable.
Speaking of Kawhi, have the Clippers made any moves?
No,
they're in a hard position because they traded all of their assets for Paul George.
Yeah.
They traded like 6, and I remember before Chris Paul got traded, there was a lot of people saying he'd love to go back to LA and play for the Clippers again, and it's like, sure, he'd love to do that, but Sam Presti isn't going to send Chris Paul to a team that he has their 5 picks from for the next 5 years. So it just didn't make sense. They're probably going to lose Montrezl Harrell. They might make a small deal or two. Rajon Rondo could be a piece that they add because it doesn't look like he's going to re-sign with LA, with the Lakers. Yeah. Sorry, same city. But the Clippers are, if Klay Thompson is able to come back maybe halfway through the year, the Clippers all of a sudden could be looking like the 4th or 5th best team in the Western Conference alone, because they're not improving and other teams are.
Yeah.